paragraph 13, you deal
Okay.
with something that occurred 2 or 3 months before he took up the position as the Minister of DPE.
Yes, I
What
remember.
happened?
He told me that he will move to the Department of DPE, and I asked him, what is DPE, because I didn't know what is DPE at that time.
Did he tell you where he had received this, or from whom he had received this news, that he was going to move to being the Minister of the DPE?
Then he said he heard it from AJ
who?
Gupta.
Was that before he moved to the Department of Public Enterprises,
Yes,
when he told you that?
yes.
Do you know how long before he actually moved, or can you not?
I think it was
remember?
2 to 3 months before he moved.
Okay.
And at that point in time, had you met Mr. AJ Gupta?
Not yet.
Then perhaps you could tell us, how often did Mr. Gigaba visit his so-called advisors once he became the Minister of the DPE? Can you remember?
I don't remember exactly how many times, but what I know, when he was at DPE, he will go more often.
And was there a time when you asked him about who are these advisors?
Yes.
What was his response?
Then he told me that his unofficial advisors, people who are advising him about certain decisions, about his work, then he differentiates them from the advisor that he had at DPE, which I know of them, which is his legal advisor, and Tamim Som as well.
So did he tell you who these unofficial advisors were?
Yes, he told me.
What did he say?
It was the Guptas, AJ and his brothers, which I don't know all of them by names, because I'm only familiar with AJ more than the other ones.
Did he tell you what they advised him about?
He said they were advising him about work, about things that they were supposed to do.
When did you first meet Mr. Gigaba's advisors?
You mean the Guptas?
Yes.
Oh, when our son was born.
Sorry?
When our first son was born.
And in what year was that?
It was in 2011.
2011.
Yes.
And how did that meeting come about? You deal with this at paragraph 17.1.
Because AJ wanted to meet our son. So he told me like a few times that he wants to meet our son.
And did you agree then to go to the Gupta's residence?
Not on the first time he told me, but eventually I agreed after a certain time.
But you then did go there.
Yes, I went there.
And who did you meet at the Gupta residence on this first visit?
AJ, his wife, his son, yeah.
And did they give your son any gift of any sort?
Yes.
Can you remember what it was?
AJ gave my son a necklace, but Malusi took it, so he never had it. He never used it.
What was the necklace made of?
It was a gold necklace.
In 2013, did you attend the Gupta wedding?
Yes, I did.
Did you go to the Waterkloof Air Force Base?
Yes, I did.
Did you go there before or after the wedding?
I only went before the wedding.
Was it the day before?
It was the day before.
The two of you and your sons went to Waterkloof, is that right?
Yes.
And the purpose of going there was to
Welcome
the guests,
Yes.
the Guptas, the
Yes.
guests. Okay, and you brought your sons with you.
Not sons. We only took the older one.
The older one?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Continue, Mr. Maite.
Yes, thank you. And then on the day of the Gupta wedding, did you accompany Mr. Gigaba?
Yes, to the wedding.
All right. Now, after the Gupta wedding, did you continue to go to the Gupta residence in Saxonwold?
Yes, we did.
Then what you do at paragraph 22 is you explain the procedure that would be followed each time you attended the Gupta residence. Please explain that. What happened with your cell phones when you went to the Gupta residence?
They always ask us to leave them at I think it's like a foyer, and then we will go leave them there. And then later, I will go take my phone when I'm bored, if I'm bored.
Did you ever ask Mr. Gigaba why you had to turn in your cell phone?
Yes, I did.
And what did he say?
Because he said some of the information was confidential, so we had to leave our phones. But it was not something was strange for him, because most of the time when I call him, his phone will be answered. Maybe when he's at work, his phone will be answered by his PA. Or maybe when they're in the NEC, they will leave. For him, it was the nature, but for me, I didn't understand why must I leave my phone.
And when you went to the residence, did you sometimes find cars already parked there?
Yes, there were a lot of cars.
What sort of cars?
Cars similar to our cars, which is like state cars.
Okay. How did you know they were state cars?
Because of the blue lights at the front, and also the bodyguards, because most of them, they dress the same, and the car, they mostly similar. It's either I don't know how to explain the nature of the cars, but it's similar, most of the cars.
Now, you've mentioned that when you went to the Gupta residence, AJ would meet with you, and he would hold discussions with Mr. Gigaba, and then they would go off to the meeting room. What sorts of things would be discussed in your presence between Mr. AJ Gupta and Mr. Gigaba before they went for a meeting?
It was not discussion, it was like briefs.
Right.
He was briefing him, not like discussion.
And what was AJ Gupta briefing Mr. Gigaba about? What was the sorts of things that he briefed him about?
So sometimes you will brief him about the SAA, or you will brief him about Transnet, or a certain meeting that they will talk about, so that he's aware before you go to the meeting.
And can you remember what was discussed or what was briefed in relation to Transnet?
Most of the time in Transnet, it will be the people that AJ feels like they need to be appointed, or need to leave, or maybe they're restructuring. And maybe they will just argue a little bit about it, because Malusi has his own favorites of people, and AJ has his own favorites of people.
And what did you hear about SAA?
SAA, most of the time, they will, when he's with AJ, they will be talking about the board. So he will be asking him about the board, or maybe Kalawa, because there was a lot of discomfort between Malusi and the chairperson of SAA. So sometimes they will discuss that.
Which chairperson of SAA are you referring to?
At that time, Monwebisi Kalawa was the CEO, then Tutumieni was the chairperson, and I think Malusi liked Monwebisi Kalawa, and Tutu didn't like him. And they will have those arguments most of the time.
Okay, thank you.
And during these briefing sessions, did you ever hear any mention made of Eskom?
Yes.
And what what was said about Eskom?
There was a time Mr. Brian Dames was the CEO of Eskom. And what I remember, Malusi liked Brian Dames. And there was a certain time then the Guptas didn't like him, especially AJ. Let me not say Guptas because it was most of the time was AJ. And AJ didn't like him. So he will say, Brian Dames needs to resign. He was uncomfortable about certain things, but he will be talking to him, not to me. And then Malusi liked Brian Dames. I think even myself, I liked him.
All right. And then, was there ever a time where Mr. Gigaba held a discussion with you about Mr. Dames?
Yes.
What did he say?
He told me that the Guptas don't like him, and he doesn't understand why they don't like him. And I think they told him that there will be a new restructuring. Someone else will move to Eskom, and then Brian Dames will leave. But I didn't know how the process is going to happen, which few months later it happened.
Ms. Gigaba, you then go on to deal with meetings held at our home. Whereabouts was that? Is that the ministerial home in Pretoria?
Yes.
And you start by dealing with meetings with the Guptas.
It was not a lot of meetings. I think AJ only came twice to our home.
And did Mr. Gigaba tell you what he was meeting AJ Gupta about?
I think that time there was some project at Ascom. It was called Egusile Project. I think that project was giving Malusi a lot of sleepless nights. And then he said, no, AJ was here to give him, they were discussing Eskom, Egusile, but it didn't give me all the details about it.
Was there a time, have a look at paragraph 33, when the relationship between Mr. Gigaba and the Guptas appeared to be strained?
Yes.
I just want to take you through paragraph 33 and tell me if there's parts of it that are wrong. It says, during early 2014, Mr. Gigaba's relationship with the Guptas began to appear strained. The Guptas wanted Mr. Gigaba to get rid of Mr. Dames as the Chief Executive Officer of Eskom because Mr. Dames was not doing what the Guptas wanted him to do for them at Eskom. However, Mr. Gigaba did not agree with the Guptas' instruction. Mr. Gigaba then started avoiding telephone calls from the Guptas. When Mr. Gigaba ignored the phone calls, the Guptas would send Mr. Nasomi to speak to him, and Mr. Gigaba would then agree to meet with them. Mr. AJ Gupta would regularly call Mr. Gigaba and demand that he attend the Gupta residence to meet certain people. This upset Mr. Gigaba because he would have to cancel his planned official appointments in order to do so. Mr. Gigaba also told me that AJ Gupta told him that if he wanted to run the DPE as he wished, he would be moved back to the Department of Home Affairs. I understand that Mr. AJ Gupta would often tell Mr. Gigaba that he should remember why he was appointed at the DPE.
Yes.
Is that correct, or is there something wrong with this paragraph? Is there anything wrong with it?
There's nothing wrong.
All right. So let's then deal with the next heading, gifts, cash and benefits received from the Guptas. Now, you've already told us about the gold necklace that he gave to your eldest son, correct?
Yes.
Deal with other gifts. There's a heading that says the white 3 Series BMW motor vehicle, the BMW. You tell us about that?
They gave him that car as a gift.
Sorry?
They gave him that car as a gift.
Who's they?
Gupta's AJ.
And when you say they gave it to him, how do you know that?
Those who went to collect it
Whereabouts did you collect it?
at Sahara.
Sahara Computers.
Yes.
And did you drive this car, this BMW?
Yes, I did.
Was it your private vehicle for a while?
Yes.
Was it a BMW?
Yes.
Okay. And what color? You recall? You
Say that
recall
again?
what color?
It was white.
It was white.
And was it transferred into your name?
Yes.
And then what happened to the car?
I'm sorry, did you say, was this a new car as far as you know?
Yes. But
And
I'm not sure it was new or it was a second hand, but it was new.
But it looked new. Did you say it was transferred into your name
Yes, at a later stage.
at some stage?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Mybeck?
Thank you. And then what happened to this car?
He gave it to we took it to his friend to fix the lights, that it never came back.
All right, and then you deal with cash and benefits.
I'm sorry, before that, Mr. Mybeck, how did it come to be registered in your name? Was this a gift for Mr. Gigaba? Was it a gift for you?
It was his, during the time, I'm the one who was using the car.
You were?
I'm the one who was using the car.
Okay. But when it was given to him, was it given as a gift or was it loaned to him to use as he
It was
may
a gift
wish?
to him.
Hmm?
It was a gift to him.
It was a gift to him.
Yes.
But
gave
he
it to me.
allowed you, then he gave it to you.
Yes.
And you got it registered in your name.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Mr. Mybeck?
Thank you. Now, did you get any wedding gift of any sort from the Guptas?
Not me, but my sister said he did. But
And what did he tell you about that?
because there's a certain time they told him, because we knew about the Guptas prior to the wedding that they were not coming. Only President Zuma will know, I think 2 days before the wedding, that they were not coming. So they gave him, so he said they will give him money as the gift, as the compensation of their sent in the wedding.
And who paid for your honeymoon?
Say that again.
Who paid for your honeymoon?
AJ did.
You know how much money Mr. Gigaba was given?
No, I don't know.
How do you know that it was Mr. A.J. Gupta who paid for your honeymoon?
Because he tells me when someone pays.
Who told you?
My sister told me.
So he told you that Ajay Gupta had paid for your honeymoon?
Yes.
Okay.